I just interviewed a guy yesterday who's raised $20 million in his first year of raising
Oh
capital.
my goodness.
Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation, where we talk about creating financial success with a special focus on business and real estate. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. Now, let's get to it. Hello and welcome to Pillars of Wealth Creation. I'm your host, Todd Dexheimer. With me, excited to have Kenny Garza. Kenny, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm great. It's right after Christmas right now, right? So it's that weird week between Christmas and New Year's where you're still trying to get back into the flow of things. But man, I had a great Christmas with your family, so doing phenomenal. What about
This
yourself?
is talk about the weird week between Christmas and New Year's. There's literally 1 week, and you're like, do I work? Do I not work? Do I spend time with the kids and the family? Do I not? Like, what do I do? And so this year I'm kind of doing a quasi Tuesday, the day after Christmas. I spent mostly with my family. I did a little bit of work. Yesterday, I worked for probably about 5 hours, then spent the rest of the time with my family.
I'm doing the same
Today,
thing.
today is mostly a work day. I think probably will be a full work day, and then tomorrow I think I'm going to do a little bit of the quasi, family and some work. So yeah, every year I'm like, what do I do this year? Do I work
Yeah,
really hard? Do I take the week off?
that's
So
right. That's right. The ebb and flow week, I guess. I don't know.
So some of the times it's really nice. I'm sure you saw this in your mortgage business. You see this in your flipping business and stuff. But it's really nice sometimes to put in the work because it seems like nobody else is putting in work, and so you don't have
Right.
any emails, you don't have phone calls, text messages coming in. It's like
Yeah.
it's so much quieter this week. So sometimes it's nice just be like, hey, I'm gonna buckle down and I'm gonna get a lot of stuff done this week.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
Yeah, I'm actually doing a lot of thinking this week. So like
yeah.
how not only like okay, what are my goals for this year, but like how am I going to tackle those goals so
Mm,
that it's in line with, the kind of business that I want to build, and not just like get caught in that like hamster wheel where you're just like, oh, just going, but I guess you could say taking the week to work on my business, if
yeah.
you will.
And that's really important, right? I think, like you said, we get caught in that little hamster wheel and we just keep on grinding and grinding and grinding throughout the year. So it is nice to have this time, this week where maybe you can just slow down and go, okay, let's think about how we're gonna operate the business this next year. I feel it's a good reset. Some people don't love New Year's as being this goal time, and because the New Year's resolutions, nobody follows through with them. But I think if
Yeah,
you take your time and really think and strategize, like you said, not only knowing your goals but also processing through, okay, how am I going to achieve these goals? It's not as simple as
that's
just
right.
knowing your goals is one thing. That's cute, right? But how do you're going to achieve the goals is where it really makes the magic happen.
I completely agree.
All right. So
100%.
Kenny, I didn't introduce you. I usually do that first, but we got sidetracked, which is fine. It's a little bit about Kenny. He became a mortgage loan officer after 3 years of hard work and dedication. Able to close over 48 million in 2021. He actually turned from there. He started to do wholesaling and flips and generated just over 110,000 realized revenue just under 90 days. Um, and that's kind of what you're doing now, and you're growing and expanding and still just improving upon kind of that process.
Yeah.
So from that, with that little bit of background, can you give our listeners a bit more about who you are, and then we'll
Yeah.
dive in.
Yeah, for sure. So I think something I think that's important as part of my journey is I moved to the United States when I was 16. So I grew up in Mexico, in Monterrey. And we moved after my dad passed unexpectedly. We used to own a business over there, so we sold everything. But
What kind
um,
of business was it?
It was a meat market and cold storage. So it was
Okay.
about maybe 5,000 square feet of cold storage that we used to lease, and then we had maybe 10,000 square feet of like meat market retail kind of thing. So that was a 40-year family business that we owned. But after my dad passed, my grandpa had passed 8 months before that, or 9 months, I think. And so it was just kind of like our call of like, all right, God doesn't want us here. Like we need to leave. So we sold everything, and in Mexico, inheritance laws, all that stuff. It took like 8 years to get a single penny from all of that.
Wow. Wow.
So and so we came to the United States with nothing. So and I think that's where I wanted to start, because when I came to the United States at 16, we were living with my aunt, and I slept on the floor probably for 3 to 6 months until we adjusted and we got our own apartment. My first job
Mm.
was a Kroger cashier. So I came with, like, English was not my first language. I didn't come with relationships. It did not come with money, with nothing. And so fast forward, got into mortgage in San Antonio, did that for 3 years, did really well. Um, but I had been studying real estate. Like, I started listening to bigger podcasts and other podcasts as well, reading the books, Rich Dad Poor Dad, all that whole thing. So 2 years before I got into mortgage. So I had already kind of started to wanting to get into real estate for the wealth creating aspect of it. And so after I got into mortgage, my initial thought was, so my fiance, her name's Camille. She got her real estate license, and so she was doing some transactions here and there, and we both were like, okay, you're gonna learn this side of the business. I'm gonna learn the mortgage side of the business, and then we're gonna be killers. We're gonna crush it. And but again, the whole idea was to be real estate investors, right? But what they don't tell you is that being a mortgage lender, like, you learn primarily more about underwriting guidelines, right? More so than how to look at the lens from a real estate investor, how you make money on a flip or on a wrap or a commercial, or like any of those things. It's a different world. And
It,
so
it's funny because I remember talking with, and I still have these conversations, right? But with these mortgage lenders, but when I was first starting this, and they would ask me these questions about my business and get so excited about what I'm doing, I'm like,
yeah,
what are you talking about? Like you get to see this every day. Like, why aren't you
yeah,
investing? Why don't you own a ton of properties? And it's like,
yeah,
but it's a totally different side of the business, and it's not an
yes,
investor mindset. It's like you
it's
said,
not.
it's you're looking at it for an underwriting perspective.
100%. So, like, the main things that so I did mostly purchase. I know rates were good back then, but I was working for a builder, right? So that's really where I found that cool niche. And man, it was just all, FHA, conventional, VA, like, I didn't really learn I didn't even know what hard money was. Well, I
Mm,
did, but that was because of my own education, not
yeah,
because of the mortgage
not
lender.
because of what. Yep.
Um, so anyways, I say all of this because February of 2022 came. Rates were still good. I just had my best year ever, as an individual, from an earning perspective. And my fiance and I kind of took a moment to pause and be like, dude, what are we building here? Right? Like, what are we actually looking to accomplish? Because we had promised ourselves that no matter how good the money was, we weren't gonna, quotations, park, right? Like, because that was not the end goal.
Yeah.
That was just a stepping stone. And so we weren't gonna adjust our lifestyle. We weren't gonna do all that, but we did. We bought the house, we bought the car, we bought all the stuff. And then we went 180. We rented the home, we sold one of the cars, and we were like, okay, well, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna go full-time real estate investing. So that was February of 2022. Um,
Were you already doing wholesales and flipping at that time?
no, nothing.
So you just quit your job.
I just quit my job. Yeah, I I
So,
know
by the
some.
way, listeners, I don't recommend doing this unless you are truly able to. Like, if you've got
Mm,
a spouse that is, if you don't have a lot of responsibilities or whatever it is, but I don't recommend usually doing this. But I do commend you for it because, man, you jumped in with both feet. You burned
yeah,
the bridges. You said, I'm not doing this mortgage thing. I'm focusing all in on the business and the business growth. So I do
Yep.
commend you for that. That is awesome. But you
Yep.
got to make sure you're prepared for it or have some sort of fault because you still have to eat.
Yeah, you
Right?
still have, responsibilities,
You still have, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's
I
easier to
mean,
do without kids. Certainly harder to
oh,
do with
that is
kids.
something that Emil and I never take for granted, right? And
Yeah.
we're 100% aware of, like, had we been in a different situation or circumstance, we wouldn't have been able to do that, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's why we rented the home and we sold the car, because we
To
had to
prepare for
basically,
that.
yeah, we had to decrease our monthly spend by $2,000 to $3,000 a month,
Mm.
and then to be able to pivot. And the other thing I will say is, I at the time I was very into, I still am, right, into very, like, the burn the boats kind of thing, like put your back against the wall. Because
Yep.
I mean, I think in a way, all my life has been that way, right?
There's
Like,
definitely something with that, right? There's a
mhm.
motivation there. If you have too much of a safety net, it's it's certainly easier to get complacent.
Oh yeah,
But if it's
100%.
like I have to do this, this is like this is me or survive or not, like
Yep.
then we're gonna do it, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think to give, like, financially an idea of kind of where we were at the moment, again, I had a good year. My fiance did some transactions here and there. I think we had like 50 or 60,000, I think. So we had like a 6 to 7 month runway had I not
Mhm.
make a single dollar, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I quit, and then I was, at the time, I had bought a land course that a buddy of mine was doing at a really high level. He was making, I don't know, triple what I was making, within a year of just land flipping.
Mhm.
And I had bought the course right before I left. I bought the course, and so I started watching it. And I planned on leaving. This is a funny story. I don't typically talk about this much, but I feel like I have to. So I was with this company for 3 years, right? I had bought this course and I'd given them a 30-day notice, right? So my plan was, okay, I'm gonna look into this course, start my marketing, and then by the time I leave, there's some momentum, right? I'm not starting from zero. Well, I guess just the way life happens. The moment that I put in my notice, one of the higher ups, at the company, just got really personally upset that I was leaving. I guess felt in a way betrayed or something. I don't know, and was extremely discouraging of my plans. So I was very forthcoming. I'm going to be a business owner. I'm going to do this. This is what I'm going to be doing, and called me names and everything. It was not a great thing, but it really motivated me, you know. And he was basically like, "Hey, if you're gonna leave, leave today." I was like, "All right, dude, like, done." Like, if you hear my keys in my laptop, I'm done. So that's how that happened. So the moment that I put in my
Usually
notice,
when somebody talks to you like that, you know that you're doing the right thing.
I think so. I think so, like, and I think about it from their perspective. I'm like, you're losing an asset, right?
Yeah.
Quotations, like, and it makes me realize, like, okay, I thought we had a personal relationship. We don't. It was just a business relationship, right? And the moment that was cut off, like, it was a different individual who I was talking to. Um, but that was for me, to your point, Todd. Like, both Camille and I internalized that as, this is what we should be doing,
Yeah.
right? Like, this is God's way of slamming the door on us so that we go and do it. Because had it been, perhaps, who knows, maybe had they given me a raise, right, or had they
Yeah.
figure out a way to make me more comfortable, I wouldn't have left, right? Um, so yeah, so I did some land flipping. So I devoured the course in like 3 or 4 days, like 12, 15-hour days, just devoured the course, started my
Mhm.
marketing, and got my first deal in about a week and a half after I sent my first mailers. Um, and then it was from there, Airbnb arbitrage. We did a little bit of wholesaling. We did a flip, 2 flips, 3 flips, 4 flips. I mean, it just kind of started scaling. And then during that period of time, though, I reconnected with a buddy of mine, and we decided to partner. He had been doing wholesaling now for about a year. And he had just turned full time when we reconnected. So we were both full time. We were like, dude, you know, you have the sales background, Kenny. I have the operational background because that was his background. I met my business partner. We worked together at a medical firm. So I was the operations manager. He was the operations director, and we kind of connected on the wealth creation, passive income side of the real estate. So he had been wholesaling for a year. I was already gone full time investing, but I was still trying to figure out, I guess, my footing, right?
Yeah.
And it was just, honestly, it was easy. You know, it was like, man, this is a great match. You're a great guy. I really like you. And, you know, likewise, we had a great relationship with one another. So we decided to join and form a partnership. And so I was managing the sales side of the business because that was my background in mortgage. And he was managing all the operation, marketing, etc. It was a great partnership, but it was a really tough time in real estate, right? That's when interest rates went up. That was August of 2022.
Yeah.
So, so I was like, man, like, you know, I had these massive doubts, right? Like, am I cut out for this? Am I good enough for this? Is like maybe I'm just terrible at sales and I never knew it, right?
Yeah.
So all of these doubts just started creeping in. It was rough, man. I think we didn't
Just not finding deals, not,
no, nothing.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, he had found a niche in, like, you know, selling the hedge funds and things like that, and then that was gone, right? So we had
Mm.
to that we were like, okay, now we have to not only figure out the sales side, but the disposition side, and so it just became this whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we didn't make money for like 4 months, like straight out 4 months. So that was really rough. And then we started finding some momentum at the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023. But then in May, I decided that it would be best for us just to part ways, um, for numerous reasons. But I sincerely think that we're both happier and we're still good friends. And I really do think it was sincerely for the best.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so that led me to being where I am today. So from May, you know, May, June, July on my own, because I had all of this experience with wholesaling, understanding marketing, understanding the sales cycle, understanding, you know, we bought all these courses, we bought, uh, you know, sales programs. And so really, we got into a mastermind. I think that was a catalyst, right? Like just surrounding ourselves with people that are way better than us at wholesaling and what we're doing, and it just really kind of help us, you know, go to the next level, to be honest.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions. So I'm wondering why you chose wholesaling and flipping. Was it just easier, more tangible, quicker income? Like what was the reason you chose flipping and wholesaling out of the get-go? There's a million different strategies, right, in real estate. There's no
Right.
right or wrong strategy.
Yeah, I think at the time, like, I definitely needed some like cash now, right? Like, my fiance and I at the time, we had just finished two Airbnbs. We did Airbnb arbitrage where you sublease a rental. You ask the landlord for permission, of course, but you sublease it to corporate and insurance housing. So we did that and it worked. It was successful, but it was not enough, right? Like most of our cash was tied up in these Airbnbs and our cash flow was maybe like 3 to 4K a month. It was not enough to what we needed. So we decided to exit them. So we sold them as like a little business and we made a little bit of profit, which was nice. And we were like, okay, what's next? Right. And then, you know, wholesaling came by and I knew about wholesaling. I knew it was like quick transactions and all of those things made sense, because where we were at in our journey. Like
Mm.
we needed to get some cash, we needed to get some momentum. And so I mean, there wasn't like a lot of thought that went into it. I think it was more of like, this is what we need right now, and this kind of checks the boxes. So let's just go do this. Um, so yeah,
I think that's actually an important thing for people to understand. If you're going to get into the business, you have to get into the business. Sometimes it doesn't matter how you get in, right? I mean, quite frankly, you started in the mortgage business. That's a way, that
Right.
was a way in. It sounds like your fiance started in the real estate sales business. Is that
Correct. As an agent. Yeah.
as an agent? That's a way in. Now that's an easy way to get trapped, right? But there's also
Exactly.
a lot of ways to get trapped. If you don't want to be a wholesaler and you start that, it's easy to get trapped in it. Same thing with a flipper, all that. But it's a
Yep.
good way to get into the business and get yourself started, because wholesaling, specifically wholesaling, it doesn't really require much money
Right.
to do, right? It's fairly cheap way to get in the business. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we man, there's so many lessons, in that partnership, so many things that I think that looking back, perhaps we could have done a little better, but you don't know what you don't know, right?
right.
So I do think like we built this enormous team of like 8 people because we were like, well, we don't want to, be self-employed. We want to own a business, but I don't think we had the proper marketing and perhaps the right infrastructure to support that at the highest level. And yeah, anyways, that all that ended up costing us a little, like a good chunk of money. So, but again, it was just a good lesson learned. And now, right, as soon as I started, for example, in May on my own, I knew exactly what I had to do, what kind of marketing channels I was going to use, my systems, my CRM, my operations, like I knew everything, right?
Yep.
And so and it really, like I did make, I think it was like 113,000 or something like that in my first 90 days between flips and wholesaling.
What
Um,
was the key to that? Like how did you do that? So many people struggle, right, to make anything in the first 90 days, to so many people struggle not to lose money in
yeah,
the first 90 days. How did you go about doing that to be successful? You don't need to give me the whole detail, but maybe a few key things that you think
sure.
were part of your success.
So I think the first thing was strategy, right? Understanding what is going to be my marketing channels, why, what is my typical lead to opportunity to contract turnaround times. At the time I needed a quick turnaround, so I went with paper leads.
Hmm.
So I used Need to Sell My House Fast is
Hmm.
one company that I use that has done great for me. So that was a big one. And then to be honest, Todd, I think it had been years in the making, right? It wasn't like I quit my job and then I made, 13K in
Yeah.
90 days. I
Yeah.
had the experience, I had the sales scripts, I had the know-how on how this business operated, so it allowed me to do it a lot faster. Um, but I like to call it my temperature. My temperature had dropped really low from my comfort level, right? So if my comfort level was making 20K a month, now I was making zero, right? And so that just really ignited me from inside to provide for my family. And it just really led me to just take on just a massive amounts of risks. And also I'm putting massive amounts of action tied to it. Because paper leads, like, I mean, 3, 4,000, $5,000 goes immediately, quickly, right? And so I put in $3,500 for my marketing, and then the rest was for operations and things like that. So, um, but I think strategy was the number one thing.
Yeah.
Understanding my market, understanding my marketing, understanding my sales process, and like having all those things in place even before the phone rang for the first time.
When that came with the preparation, as you mentioned, and I think it's so easy to see the 100+ thousand in 90 days and go, wow, that's amazing. How can I do that? I want to do that today.
Yeah.
But you don't have any knowledge, right? You don't have any background. You've never read a book. You've never, like,
Yeah.
it's just sorry,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
It's not.
Most of these people, I would say 99.5% of people, and I might be low on my statistic, have there's no such thing as overnight success, right?
Right.
They've done a lot of stuff in the background that nobody ever sees. And then they go out there. I just interviewed a guy yesterday who's raised $20 million in his first year of raising
Oh my
capital.
goodness. That's
That's a
amazing.
lot of money, right? That's amazing. He's excellent job, done a really good job at it, but he's got years of experience prior to that prepping. He's laid the groundwork out. He's done a ton of things prior to even doing his first capital raise that made that all possible, right? Same thing
Yeah.
with you. You've done many things prior to this. You worked in a sales position, sales role. That's prepping you. You know, you've been studying and learning and doing all that for years, and then you pulled the trigger and were successful right off the bat. But it was the groundwork that you laid. It was the strategy that you created that helped you be successful. So I love that.
Yep. I totally agree.
Kenny, what's a mistake that you've made, and how have you learned from it?
Oh man. Gosh, there's so many. I'm gonna try to give you the best one. I think the I'm not gonna call it a mistake because I don't think it was a mistake. I think it was a learning opportunity
Well,
more
they're
than
all
any.
learning opportunities, right?
Yeah, true, true. I think getting into a partnership and but again, um I loved being in that partnership. I still, love my business partner. He's one of my best friends. But I don't know that I would have got into that partnership knowing what I know now, right? Like, or at least better defining the specific ground rules in which you play in on a partnership.
So how did that happen? Was it you rushed into it? You didn't understand the rules? Like what, how was it a mistake? Because you said
Uh,
you're still friends with the guy. You guys are left in a good relationship,
yeah, we
which
did.
is great. But so what happened there? Why did you get into the partnership in the first place? That what was that mistake or learning lesson?
I think I'm gonna narrow it down to one single word, Todd,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna call it fear.
Mm,
I think I was just scared,
mm.
like I had just sold my Airbnbs. I did
Lack of
not know
confidence,
what to
right?
do. Lack of confidence and really
Yeah.
not knowing what's next. And
Hmm.
I saw this opportunity with, a buddy of mine that I had a great relationship with. He was already successful, rolling. The market had just changed, so we were all kind of trying to figure it out together. And it felt, I think, better to go through it together with somebody rather
Yeah.
than doing it on my own.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think that's really when I really look back at it and I take a moment to pause. I think we I think we both did it. I think we both did it out of fear, hoping that it was also gonna, be the best thing ever, right?
Yeah.
Which we both had the intention to.
Yeah. I think that's a super important lesson to pass down to people because partnerships seem like they can be good and they can be, right? So I don't want to say that they're not, but I've had both good and bad partnerships, and you don't want to do it out of that lack of confidence, that fear, that
Yeah,
emotion.
right,
You want to make sure truly is a good fit, and you're truly going to be complementary, and you have the same goals. I think that's really big too. Like what are
right.
your goals and what are your business partners' goals? Because if they're different, that's going to be a really tough slug or along the way.
Mm,
There's going to be a
yeah,
time where that just doesn't work anymore. So I
right,
think those are super important and to really take a lot of time and date your business partner
right.
before you jump into to a relationship,
Yeah, I totally agree.
to a
Uh,
marriage.
Yeah, well, and to be honest, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's really kind of what it is, right? And I actually think in a way, I like I heard that partnership in ways that I didn't understand, right?
Mm,
Because I didn't have that experience because it just kind of happened, right? And at the time, it felt good. It felt like that's where we should be. That's where, I think like God wanted us to be. And I still believe that because it led to where we are today, right? Where we're both happier. We both learned a lot. We both are growing together a lot. So, you know, I really do think it was for the best. But again, I think that's a really big one for me that Um, man, there's just so many lessons there, you know, but
Yeah.
I think the biggest one, like you said, is lack of confidence and understanding like that's not a good place to make decisions out of, right?
Yeah.
Under any circumstances.
What's what's next, Kenny? Where you grow where you growing and into the future? We talked a little bit before the show, so I want to make
Yes.
sure we can talk about what you're doing now.
Yeah, for sure. So after, you know, these last 6 months of wholesaling, flipping, you know, doing well, now we're starting to get to the point where we're starting to pause and reflect. And my fiance and I were just asking the tough questions, right? Like, what are we doing here? What are we building, right? What are we working towards to? Are we closer or further away from the reason that we even got into real estate 7 years ago, right? When we read our first book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, are we on track? Or are we not? And the reality is we're not, right?
Mhm.
We you know, the constant just always chasing the next sell. It's just, there's nothing wrong if you build a business and that's what you enjoy. And again, don't
Right.
misunderstand me. If that's what you like and you just want to make a lot of money and then reinvest that money, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. But that's the beautiful thing about real estate, right? Like, you can tailor your business to your life rather than your life tailoring to your business, which is what I feel in a way where I'm at right now. That like the need of the business has taken away certain components of my life that I want to get back now,
Mm.
right? Like the time with my family and my relationships and you know, exploring, traveling, all these different things that we want to accomplish in our life before we have kids, right? Like that's another big part of it. It's like, man, we want to do some traveling. We want to perhaps live abroad a little bit. And but now what the focus is okay, how can we build a business that tailors to that lifestyle, right? So that we can still continue to grow and enjoy our career or our business life without sacrificing other side of our business. And so what I'm focusing on right now is purchase and hold. So buy and holds are moving forward what our primary focus is. And we're going to be doing some subject to wraps. So selling, owner finance. Um, that is we found a strategy where you can still get paid some money as if you were like wholesaling, but you build a note or a long-term and you become the bank also, right?
Right.
You don't have to manage the tenants, you just got to manage the money. So you're a bank. And we have analyzed all of the different exit strategies in single family, and for our personal lifestyle, I think that fits better the vision. And that's again, we were talking a little bit about this before, but that's really right now what's going on in our lives is we're taking a moment to pause and think about what are we doing here, right? Why are we doing this? So,
So your kind of moving forward goal here is to focus on cash flow, if that's correct,
mhm,
right? And so we're
100%.
looking at let's focus more on cash flow, less on that quick hit. Which
100%.
wholesaling and flipping, and I flipped over 100 houses, so I get the business.
Yep.
It's a grind. It can be really good money,
Right.
but it's a different business, and it's a commission business.
Exactly.
It's a transactional business. You're
Right.
only as good as your current transactions.
Yep.
You have no business moving forward if you don't do another deal, right?
Exactly.
And so that's definitely a different when you're talking about traveling and maybe traveling abroad and kids and that stuff.
Yeah.
That looks a lot different if you're wholesaling, right? Now you might be able to take a little bit of time off and have your marketing still, and if you got your team, and the more you build it, right, the potentially the more you can systematize it. But when you're talking passive and you're talking, um, you know, seller financing type of deal, now you're a lot more passive.
Right.
So you mentioned a couple types of strategies that you're kind of looking at. Can you explain those to the listeners a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so for buy and holds, in our market, specifically in the DFW area, buying a, buying a rental for a classic long-term rental and cash flowing is, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because it's not, but it's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult.
Is that
Um,
because of pricing and interest rates right now? Is that,
Correct.
yeah.
Yeah, just
Okay.
because of the amount of equity, right? Like
Yep.
you would need probably 20 to 25% down per home, right, to be able to make that work.
Yep.
And at the level that we're trying to scale, and on more on the creative side of things,
That's a lot of
uh,
cash.
yeah, exactly. Like I know that, let's say a rental is, I don't know, 250,000. I know that with $50,000, the way that we're trying to acquire things, I can maybe have five properties instead of just one that actually cash flow even more, right?
Mm.
So our strategy at the moment is buying properties via subject to, and it's a buzzword, right? Right now, a lot of people are hearing about it, and rightly so. Subject to is, I call it my payment takeover program for my sellers, and all that it is that you taking over somebody's mortgage, and you start to make the payments on their behalf. There is a title transfer, so you are protected. The seller's also protected, so they do get, a deed of trust, a promissory note, but you get to keep their current interest rate and their current mortgage as is, right? So if they have a 3.5% rate, well, now you have a 3.5% rate. And most of the time, under those conditions, now you have a little bit more of an exit strategy where perhaps a regular long-term rental maybe makes sense, right?
Yep.
But we're taking it a step further. So that's only the acquisition side of the business. It's just we're taking over people's mortgages. And then secondary to that, the way that we're exiting is we're finding a buyer that needs owner finance, that they don't qualify for conventional financing. Perhaps they have an ITIN, or perhaps they don't have credit, but they have great income. Maybe they own a business and they wrote everything off. So their tax return showed that they made $10,000, but they have 500K in the bank, right? It happens. It
Yeah.
really does happen.
That's a very familiar story, by the
Yeah,
way.
yes, exactly. And well, me coming from the mortgage background, I can't, like, I turned down so many loans that I was like, why are you not qualifying for a loan? Like, this does not make sense,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like sincerely, right? It's like you work your tail off, you have a lot of money in the bank, but just because you're not willing to pay Uncle Sam, rightfully so, right? With all the tax incentives that we get as business owners, you're getting penalized. So, um, so a lot of those people turn into owner finance. Typically those loans, and I like really to mention this, because people, when they think owner finance, they're like, oh, you're gonna pay a lot of money, and and interest rates and stuff like that. And it's higher because it's riskier, right? All brokers, all lending practices are based on risk.
Yep.
That's why if you have more down payment and you have a higher credit score, your interest rate is lower, because you're regarded as a lower risk of default borrower, right? So when you're doing owner finance, some of these folks don't have credit, don't have a social, right? Have an ITIN, perhaps they don't have super stable income, but they can still show some income. So we're going through that process. And I found a great person here in DFW that has a lot of experience, helped other investors to do like 100 of these last year. So
Mm.
I'm not going to pretend to be the expert. I'm going to outsource that to the experts. And again, comes down to strategy, right? I know I'm good at acquisition. I'm not going to worry about how can I do it all myself, right? I'm trying to build an acquisition machine here, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Um, so in a nutshell, we buy a mortgage, say at 3%. We give 10% or $10,000 down to the seller to take over their payments, and then we're turning around and selling it at 10% interest rate, 11% interest rate, with a 10 to 15% down for the new buyer. And then my down payments offset each other, and sometimes there's a little bit of money extra for me. Um,
So overall, you end up paying nothing. You might pay a little bit up front, whatever, but you're overall you're paying nothing. And maybe even making money, like you said.
right,
And,
exactly.
and then there's the difference between your payment. Maybe your payment's $1,000 a month, and the new buyer's payment is 1,700 a month.
1800, 1700, correct.
Okay.
And you're only managing paper, right? Like you hire a third-party escrow company that also notifies the seller when the payments are made. You keep
Mm.
them happy. right? So, because that's a big one, right? It's like, how do I know if my payments are being made? Well, just have the third party escrow company send them a notification. Um,
Interesting.
and yeah, I mean, the cool thing about this is on average, $400 is a month, right? Is kind of like average what we're shooting for. But like for example, right now I have a home run in the pipeline where I might make $1,200 a month on one single house, right? It gets you thinking, right? Like how many homes on a single family does it take as a regular rental for you to make $1,200 a month? Six, seven, eight?
Yeah, it's especially today's rates and prices. Well, probably
Exactly.
if you can make any money, by the way.
Exactly.
Um,
And
the
so,
other thing I think is attractive with this is if you're selling it to somebody on seller financing, they're responsible for the roof. They're responsible for the
it's their home.
furnace. They're responsible for the water heater. And that's the biggest thing as an owner. I used to own a lot of single family homes and we would make, I'd be making five, six, 800 bucks, $1,000 a month on that home. And then I'd have to replace a roof. And
Right.
for 2 years in a row, I wouldn't, basically I didn't make any money because I had to replace the roof, and then the
Right.
wash machine would break down and the refrigerator will break down and you name it.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, a rental, which I thought I was cash flowing $1,000 a month, ends up cash flowing $100 a month.
exactly.
So
And
that's
that's
the
very true.
big thing that you're eliminating is those big ticket items that can really eat your profits away. You're essentially doing a triple net lease.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. Absolutely.
Right. Great conversation so far. Look, with we got we got a limited time here, so we got to wrap up. I got two last questions I want to ask you.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with the first one. Is
All
what's
right.
a favorite book you can recommend to our listeners?
Oh gosh, there's so many. But I'm just gonna go with my personal favorite, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight.
Mm.
Have you read it?
I've listened to it, and actually, my kids loved it, even though there's some naughty words in there and some
Yeah,
stories
yeah.
we had to maybe fast forward through. But um, it's a great book. I agree. Great book. A lot of life lessons. And by the
Mm,
way, if you're going through some difficult times in your business, it's a great book to read or listen
exactly.
to because he talks about just getting smacked around constantly. Like I did not, you think of Nike and you think of this big company that, the,
Right.
the
That
owner's
had it made, that
yeah,
raised
the
$1
owner's a
billion,
billionaire.
like
Of course, it's been
yeah.
easy for them.
Yeah.
Holy cow! Like there was like 20 years or maybe even more of complete struggle, like
Yeah.
barely making it by for like 20, 25
Yeah.
years. So
Yeah. You
cool.
you know, my just to make a quick note on that, my biggest aha moment with that book, to your point, is like understanding the what it means to be in business and what it takes, right, to be successful, the stamina and the endurance that you need. But my biggest takeaway was at the time, Adidas was already huge,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Adidas had all of the athletes.
Yeah.
Adidas had all of the athletes. They owned the marketplace. They were Goliath, right? And I did not know that. I thought like
Yeah.
Nike for the longest time was also a Goliath.
Yeah.
And so they came in, this little itty bitty company with an idea, and they grew to a point where now they're the Goliath. And it was just like, oh my gosh, like that was just such a shattering, like a limiting belief shattering moment for me, where like,
Well,
like
because I
wow,
think a
you can
lot of
really do
people,
anything.
yeah, I think a lot of people think that these other people are doing it. Like how am I going to be any better than them, right? And so I think that limits a
Yeah,
lot of people from doing things that are amazing. Is they're like, wow,
right.
Nike's already doing this. I can't compete with the likes of Nike. Yeah, you can because Nike did it to Adidas, and
Yeah.
Adidas probably did it to somebody else, right?
Yep.
And so yeah,
Walmart to Kmart.
right, Walmart to Kmart, and even within that, you can carve out your own niches that
Yeah.
people still buy Adidas. They buy Nikes, like they buy Asics, whatever it is. Like
They're
there's
all doing great.
still, right. They all have their own little group of people that they target. And there's still room for you if you're going to do it great.
Absolutely.
Um, Kenny, last question. What are your 3 pillars of wealth creation?
My 3 pillars of wealth creation. Um, man, I'm gonna say my personal relationship with my fiance is like number one for me. Just making sure that I have a healthy household, that we're on the same page about what we're building. That can really make or break you. Like, because when the going gets tough, you need your significant other to be there to pick you up and continue to encourage you at every point.
Yep.
Um, at the same time, and the other one I would say is faith. Like God has been just a big part of our lives. Just man, when you have those moments of doubt, right, and you're like, well, if I spend this money, am I gonna get a return back, right? If like those moments of doubt, typically I can eliminate them when I know that I have God always looking out for me in my back. And
Love it.
so I know that if I give my absolute best, he's gonna take care of everything else.
Yeah.
And so that's just it's been so present, and it's been changing the way that I look at things. Now I'm helping other people also get started in many different ways, and it's been great, man. It's awesome. And last but not least, I would say education, education and strategy. Just you can't just get into this business and hope to figure it out. You hear some stories here and there of people that do figure it out, that have never read a book in their life, right? But gosh, it's just so hard. If you don't know what you don't like know, or put yourself in the rooms where people that can help you, guide you, which again leads me to relationships, right? Like it really is a team sport. Even in, like, you have your own business, Todd, I have my own business. What we're doing here is we're collaborating, right? Like, I'm learning from you. Like, oh, this is the way Todd sees things, and like just small conversations that can just change your business.
I think, one thing you said there about the education strategy, some people can go about it on their own, but the deal is there's a blueprint that's been made, right? The blueprint's already made, and choose the blueprints that you like. And you might be able to take a couple blueprints and you go, I like this floor plan. I like this floor plan. You can kind of combine them a little bit and tweak them. You move the closet here and I really want the master bedroom just a little bit bigger. I don't
Mm,
like where this bathroom is placed. I'm going to just push it over here just a little bit. Like
yeah.
the blueprint's there, right? And we just can make minor little adjustments to get it to where it's our business,
Mm,
it's our strategy, and it's
yeah.
going to work for us. But why start from scratch and not use what's already been built, right? That's
Yeah,
that's
that's
the
gold.
education, right? That's the strategy. That's what
Yeah.
you're talking about right there. So I love that. Man, Kenny, good conversation. Really appreciate it. Lots of good takeaways for our listeners. Listeners, look, go back, grab one thing that Kenny said and apply it to your business, to your life. You're going to be better off for it. Kenny, how can our listeners get in touch with you, learn more about what you got going on?
Through social media, so Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's the same handle in all of them. It's Kenny, Kenny J Garza, Kenny J Garza, and you can find me in all of my social media. I particularly enjoy Instagram best to connect with folks, but Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, either of those, any of those will work.
Love it. Awesome. Again, Kenny, really appreciate it. And you have a fantastic rest of the day.
You as well. Thank you, Todd.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. I appreciate you being a loyal listener. I would love to have you go on to our Facebook page and subscribe, give us a thumbs up, go on to iTunes or wherever you listen and give us a rating and review. Don't forget to subscribe. Your rating and review just helps us push this out to more and more people and continue to grow our audience and hopefully positively affect a ton of people out there that really need this and want this. So the other thing I've got for you is a free ebook on my website. So go on to venturedproperties.com, and download our free ebook on real estate and on syndication. And I've got some data points in there, some really good stuff for you. So I'd love to have you take a look at that. It's free. I'm not expecting anything from it. And also, look, if you want some help in multifamily, want some help learning, growing, getting your business off the ground, I would love to talk to you about what it would look like to work with me potentially and see if that's a good fit. So you can go to coachwithdex.com and check that out, and we can definitely have a call. Thanks a lot for listening. You make it a fantastic rest of the day. I'll catch you on the next episode.